Again, our top story tonight, right now, is about this. These troops in the streets from California to D.C. And as many people asked across this long summer, how can this be happening in America? How is this legal? And tonight, the answer, fresh from the federal courts, is this is not legal. Donald Trump's deployment of troops to patrol Americans is illegal. And it smacks of an illicit bid to create Trump's own national police force, a police state. And that is according to a federal judge. And I'm going to walk you through the ruling. It's a key setback for Trump's bids to seize unitary powers and wield them against you, against us, against Americans. A judge ruling President Trump cannot deploy the National Guard and Marines the way he did in L.A., that it is illegal. The ruling, of course, follows long-standing precedent, which many experts cited when Trump first put these troops in the streets. We reported that at the time. The ban on soldiers patrolling citizens is well known in this country. Anyone with U.S. military experience or legal experience or any recent interaction with a history textbook, quite frankly, knows the limit. It's under a 19th century law, posse comitatus, and the judge ruled Congress has forbidden the president to use the army for the purpose of executing general laws. That's just a fancy way of saying for law enforcement, except when expressly authorized by the Constitution or an act of Congress. This ruling against Trump also has some damning evidence, how the Trump administration's own training materials note the law barred troops from doing the things Trump wanted them to do. You can see it here. This is a PowerPoint training slide that was included in this ruling against Trump today. And I'm not going to read all of it, but it's bad for the Trump administration because it shows how these very troops, under these legal restrictions, were warned the Posse Comitatus Act, PCA, prohibits them from law enforcement functions on Americans, like traffic control or crowd control. And the judge found Trump appears to have an illicit purpose of calling National Guard troops into other cities across the country, thus creating a, quote, national police force with the president as its chief. Now, that's a warning about the kind of autocratic national police forces that we tend to see in other countries, in less democratic countries. The judge saying no national police force should operate like that in America under Trump or any leader. Not a partisan statement, not a blue or red thing, but that we are not a police state and we're not about to become one when we have actual laws followed and judges overseeing the government. Now, rhetoric about Trump can be intense in politics. And he, of course, did try to steal the 2020 election that he lost. And lately, he's been musing repeatedly about being a, quote, dictator, or why some people like some things dictators do. But this is not politics, what I'm telling you about tonight. And this is not Democrats warning about him or trying to make him sound really bad for potentially their own purposes. This is the concern based on the evidence from a measured federal judge. A judge who's noticed that the kind of sweeping police force powers Trump is seeking could also be used to push the military into our elections. Again, not some Democrat doing scare tactics or excuses about losing the last election. This is a judge noting that under what Trump's DOJ is saying right now, they argue that they can have the president send troops basically anywhere to help enforce basically any federal law, which is never how it's been. You don't have soldiers showing up to audit your taxes, even though, of course, the president oversees the tax laws through the IRS, but not through the military. Pretty basic. So in this new ruling, the judge notes that Trump's DOJ's argument is so extreme, he says, could President Trump assert he's unable to enforce obscure tax laws and then use the federalized National Guard to execute a range of laws? And he brings up specifically, quote, the election laws. This is a ruling about Trump acting illegally. The concern is that he would use the military powers not to better enforce election laws illegally. No, I think it's pretty clear to interfere in the election itself if he lost, or in the vote counting if he thinks he might lose. And this is not a hypothetical. There's been extensive reporting, the Jan 6 committee, and our own chart, if you recall, of the 2020 plots Trump tried, some of them indicted. And if you look down there at the black one, which was not indicted because it was abandoned, it was Trump's effort, his exploration of if he could get the military to seize voting machines. He wanted to do this then. In fact, his later convicted lawyer, Sidney Powell, was going to be some kind of election prosecutor in that effort. It was discarded when Giuliani said it went too far. I repeat, when Giuliani said it went too far. So tonight, judges are sounding the alarm. They are trimming Trump's powers as he vows to appeal the case, which is his legal right. So this goes up to the appeals and the Supreme Court in a process we've seen. And Trump lost this round. But I got to tell you, it's also notable that the administration's approach, seizing powers, threatening to defy courts, then trying to run out the clock, it still got them months of troops in the streets of L.A. before this setback today. Remember, that L.A. deployment began back in early June.
It's Orwellian, simply lying to people. Unconstitutional, illegal act, his mess. We're trying to clean it up.
We're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country.
There's a protocol. There's a process. He didn't care about that.
What are the troops in L.A. to do? And that is unclear to pretty much everybody at this time.
I, in partnership with Governor Gavin Newsom, are suing President Trump.
California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next.
Other states were next, including later our capital. You could like Gavin Newsom or not. You could think he's standing up strong or showboating. But the things he said then, having clashed with Trump and dealt with him, have been borne out. And legally, this round goes to Newsom. He's fought harder than some of these D.C. Democrats. You have to put an MIA out to find Chuck Schumer a lot of these weeks. And the governors are stepping up. But let's be clear about the facts. When judges rule against Trump this way, this long since June, many are still using the old rules and timelines that do effectively reward Trump for abusing power in the meantime. As a matter of practical impact, I'm not telling you how it could be or should be. I'm telling you how it is, best we can see from the evidence. Practically, today shows that Trump, according to this judge, was illegal, is trying to build a police state that's not allowed, and blatantly violated these limits on troops in the streets. But it also shows how the Steve Bannon playbook of flooding the zone, moving fast, and testing who will keep up or stop anything in real time is also still working. And the president is not exactly chastened for his use of these powers in D.C. or L.A. or elsewhere. He is now threatening to send troops to, other places like Chicago. So this is serious. The courts are finding that Trump's goal is not cutting crime. It's a personalized police state, which other leaders have used to try to steal elections and end democracy. It's not a Harris October talking point. It's what judges are finding. And Trump's talking about crime, but the whole point is not whether there is sometimes terrible crime in our country, like in Chicago this weekend, there definitely was. But that, as I told you at the top of the news tonight, our laws restrict soldiers trained for war, armed for war, from using that war training on our own people, on you. If this weren't actually happening, it would seem unnecessary to state this. You might turn on the news and think, why are they Constitution-splaining to me? Of course, the guys in the camo to fight over there aren't supposed to be over here in my neighborhood pointing weapons of war at random civilians. Of course not. And yet here we are. As for the threat to go elsewhere, the Democratic governor of Illinois responding today.
First, I want to address the president's unhinged remarks a few minutes ago, begging me to call him. No, I will not call the president, asking him to send troops to Chicago, to Chicagoans. What you can do is look out for your communities and your neighbors. Know your rights. Film things that you see happening in your neighborhoods. Authoritarians thrive on your silence. Be loud.
Authoritarians thrive, says a governor. Be loud, he says to the citizens. Citizens who have spent months in L.A. watching camouflaged soldiers walk around, which is what's happening still today in our capital. No police state, say the judges, but are they saying it as loud as the governor says we need, and are they saying it fast enough? Your thoughts?
So my thought today is sort of twofold. One is right now in Brazil, a former president is on trial for engaging allegedly, in an insurrection. He lost the election. He said he won. And we like to think of ourselves as exceptional, and we're at the vanguard, and our legal system is at the very top of the world in terms of the rule of law. That's not true. The rule of law is functioning in Brazil. It's notable that Donald Trump has been taking Brazil to task precisely because they are holding their former president to the rule of law. It is refreshing to see Judge Breyer in California do the same today. And I thought there was another part of the opinion that was refreshing. He used the testimony of current military people who testified, who understood that they were not allowed to violate the Posse Comitatus Act.
Right, and the trainings we saw.
Exactly. And they said that what we were being asked to do, we were not supposed to do. We understood that if we were called in, we had a limited role. We were not supposed to engage in law enforcement that is against the law. It was so notable that this is the government's own witnesses were saying this, when the government lawyer's position was, oh, the Posse Comitatus Act is an irrelevancy. The president can do whatever he wants. And it was so heartening to see that the law enforcement people who were on the stand were like, no, that's not how we were trained. That's not something we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to be functioning as law enforcement in our own country.
What does it tell you that the judge was so concerned that this is the outlines of a police state? And
Absolutely.
that's not an op-ed. It's not an angry podcast. It's a judge looking at what the evidence is.